Hi, and welcome to Adventures in Relationship, a psychoeducational show about healthy relationships with romantic partners and yourself. I'm Amy Gordon, a queer individual and couples psychotherapist working on unceded Tiwa land in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I also offer virtual therapy, so reach out if you'd like to work with me individually or as a couple. Most couples come to therapy and or break up during a certain relationship phase. And that's what I want to talk about today, relationship stages or phases. I want to present a helpful framework for relational stages and leave you with some useful insight, whether you're partnered or single, for understanding the flow of relational evolution in modern consensual couples. There are a number of relationship stage models, and most of them are junk, in my not so humble opinion. They're often based on the theorist's patriarchal delusions regarding marital subjugation and oriented towards spiritual bypassing and or maybe more like religious notions that involve bypassing real emotion and intimacy in relationship. And or they provide too much emphasis on relationship disillusionment, describing stages of separation that are in fact not always necessary. And after about a dozen or so breakups in my own life, my lived experience really doesn't reflect these foreboding signs as stages, but rather intermittent factors that exist in a lot of even healthy relationships that can be predictive of relational decay when occurring in excess. And just to clarify, I'll offer that KNAP's 10-stage relational model supposes that couples will inevitably break up by an orderly procession through the stages of differentiation, circumscribing or talking less, stagnation, avoidance, and then termination in that order. This and other models oversimplify or just plain get it wrong when it comes to what happens in adult primary attachment relationships. But I like Susan Campbell's 5-stage relational model, and it's this model that most figures in the realm of relationships and attachment who actually know what they're talking about tend to reference. One of the reasons I'm excited about Susan's 5-stage model is that it's aspirational, describing the joy that can be achieved in relationship only through intentional effort on the part of both parties. The stages are 1, romance, 2, power struggle, 3, stability, 4, commitment, and 5, bliss. We'll break this down. The first stage, romance, can last anywhere from a few months to a few years, and it's sometimes called the passion or excitement phase for obvious reasons. In this stage, love is blind. It's highly projective, but we're really only projecting idealism onto our partner. It's a bad idea to get married in this stage because you really don't know who you're dealing with. Thais Gibson, a modern day attachment expert with a really great podcast, actually takes Susan Campbell's 5-stage model and breaks the first stage into 2 separate stages, dating and honeymoon. She does this because depending on one's attachment style, this stage can look really different. For example, 2 avoidantly attached people will likely cling to the dating stage for as long as possible, avoiding the preliminary commitment of a honeymoon experience, which, anxious and disorganized attachment tends to expedite that preliminary commitment for the purpose of a sense of emotional security. So there may be a more pronounced progression during the romance stage for some. In this stage, we are biologically predisposed to the idealism I was referring to that occurs through a temporary and endogenous, which means like from within, cocaine-like dopaminergic dependency. For evolutionary purposes, we got to stay with this person long enough to successfully procreate. And part of that kind of dopaminergic dependency might not be exactly the right word, but it is sort of like, that kind of fixation, obsession that goes on. There's an addictive quality to new relationship energy. We tend to fixate, obsess, experience more motivation and excitement than our baseline, a lot more motivation and excitement than our baseline, just like with stimulant addiction. And also, like with stimulant addiction, our capacity to continue to experience the high is diminished over time. We get strung out, we start to experience disappointment with our partner, our anxiety and agitation escalate in a neurobiological process similar to post-acute withdrawal. And this leads to stage 2, the power struggle phase. This stage is typified by a painful awareness of our partner's faults and flaws. This is a stage that sends couples into therapy, and sadly, most couples never leave this stage intact. And I'm not saying that to scare you, but just think about your own life. How many relationships have you been in that made it past this stage? But some couples do remain in this stage, often unhappily married for decades. It kind of depends on the constitution of the person and all sorts of factors, but they tend to have a spirit of not giving up, and that's immensely helpful, but more is required if you actually want to get through the power struggle stage. They say when you're going through hell, keep going, and that's my advice for this stage. Don't dig your heels in and refuse to do the dirty work. In this phase, we've stepped off of cloud 9, and our individual psyches begin nagging at us, insisting that we find out if our partner can actually handle the realities of who we are and what a shared life would have to entail for us to truly be compatible. So we kind of audition our partner, and it's an unconscious process, but we are kind of putting them through the ringer. So we audition them around mental health, children, substance use, our quirks and pet peeves, you name it. We also get really irritated by all of their shit. We start to bicker about the things we don't like, and really we're trying to get our partner to change. And in some ways, both partners do need to make changes in order to move forward. But we also have to confront the reality that our partner is only going to be able to make limited behavioral changes, and that their personality, trauma history, and basic character traits are going to remain fixed. And we need to determine whether or not that's good enough, whether or not we can make that work. A skilled couple therapist can be immensely helpful in assisting partners with learning how to deal with one another, to make functional agreements, and facilitate the intense communication that this stage requires. On a neurobiological level, it's often surges of dopamine, which spike during conflict, that fuel great makeup sex. That's one of the things that keep couples together during this phase. That sex yields vasopressin and endogenous opioids like endorphins and oxytocin that induce attachment and keep the relationship relatively sticky despite regular stress and turmoil. For more securely attached folks, who are the minority, getting through this stage can be a relatively painless process. But for those with more intense relational and attachment rupture in their past, the power struggle stage can be really hellish. And the only way out might require professional assistance and some creative and collaborative workarounds in order to establish stability and security in the relationship. Some couples, those who tend to be more securely attached, they can ease their way through the progressive establishment of stability. But other couples might require a separation or some real so-called come to Jesus talks in order to really grasp what it would require to make the relationship work. It's rare that couples get married in this phase. The high has worn off and things are stormy. And when couples do marry during this stage, it's often due to a false belief that imposed commitment and maybe the distraction of a wedding can save the couple. This makes for a really distressing early marriage fraught with doubt and regret. So not recommended to get married during this stage, but it happens. When couples have mutually accepted their partner's flawed humanity, acknowledged their own difficult traits, grieved their idealized hopes for the relationship, and have problem solved what they have to do to make the relationship work, this stage evolves into stability. This third stage, stability, is characterized by harmony, contentment, and a consistent flow of serotonin, nature's antidepressant, and also oxytocin, the attachment hormone. Our lives become easier together. We establish flow to our daily lives and interactions. Most modern couples whose relationships fulfill the vow of till death do we part have been able to progress to at least this stage. This is actually the point at which it's recommended by relationship experts to entertain the idea of marriage. You know that the two of you have what it takes to make it work. I've known quite a few couples who never married or got married in previous stages who are either perfectly content staying here or they kind of stagnate after some time at this point. Without continued pursuit of shared vision for the relationship and a mutual valuation of intimate communication and personal growth, the risk here is that we become complacent and lackluster. When couples come into counseling at this stage, it's often because one partner feels content being in prolonged stability and the other doesn't. Affairs can start after years in this stage if partners aren't truly sharing about themselves, maintaining a connection, and keeping the romantic love alive through intentional effort. After so long, this period of stability has concretized faith in both partners that this is a person they can be truly happy with. So why not get married? And whether or not the traditional notion of marriage is appealing to you, some ceremonious acknowledgement of the depth of commitment you two are willing to engage with one another is what exemplifies the fourth stage, commitment. There's something about speaking your heartfelt desire to share your life in a grounded and informed manner that serves as a sort of coming of age shift in actualizing a shared dream. Mutual declaration of devotion and excitement for your shared future is what defines this stage. Declaring, discussing, or exchanging vows, shared planning and envisioning, demonstrating in an overt way each one's full investment in the other is the bridge. It's just kind of a bridge stage, but it's the bridge to bliss, which is the final and prolonged stage of continued commitment, wherein both parties maintain energy, focus, and investment, knowing that the rewards of prioritizing their relationship are worth every ounce of invested attention and intention. This fifth stage, bliss, is elusive to many. It requires ongoing engagement, curiosity, and the mindful maintenance of their unique and creative relationship. Fairy tales hilariously present that happily ever after occurs once a princess and prince finally meet in the romance stage. The reality is that happily ever after can occur through ongoing effort in a mutually beneficial, co-created shared life through learning how to operate from a two-person oriented system focused on fulfilling both hearts' desire. This is really the goal of the psychobiological approach to couple therapy, or PACT, and why I prefer this model to others, other couple therapy models, that is. It's not through each individual's secure attachment, but through secure functioning, which is the goal of PACT, that we create the conditions for continued relational development, ultimately culminating in indefinite bliss. For most, it takes a lot of work to get here. It requires numerous ego deaths and a steady willingness to look outside of the box of conventional reason. We may all know a few of these couples who just seem to know how to flow with life and really enjoy each other's companionship for decades. You don't have to be fully healed or enlightened to get here, but you do have to be willing to stretch your comfort zone and roll up your sleeves, no matter what stage your relationship is at. Now I'm going to break down some specific advice for getting through each stage and arriving at bliss. If you're single, your work is to determine if you really want a lifelong, satisfying partnership, or if you're still experimenting and exploring dating. Be honest about this. If you're looking for a potential life mate, go in with that attitude and honor your desire for a truly compatible partner. Don't just go out with anybody you're attracted to. Look for the early signs of emotional maturity and a desire for relational fulfillment in a partner. You don't have to get all intense and overshare your desire to be with the one right away, but make sure your communication behavior and even your dating profiles are aligned with your values. Be selective with who you spend your time getting to know. If you're in the romance stage, slow the fuck down and get to know your potential mate for a while. Suss out if this is potentially a person who would be compatible in going the distance with you. Really not slut shaming here, but if you have insecure attachment, it's likely that you'll prematurely commit to a person if you introduce sex too early in the relationship. So that's just something to keep in mind. That's a matter of the neurobiology of it all. So pace yourself, ground yourself every day with a reorientation toward your relational goals. Know that in this stage, we have blinders on and we're not seeing some of the inevitable upcoming struggles if the relationship continues. And don't be afraid to talk about this and normalize preparing for some impending reality checks. No matter how good this person makes you feel, you owe it to yourself to bow out if you become clear that this person is not available for the type of relationship you want. If you're in the power struggle stage, know that it's temporary and necessary. But both of you have to be willing to offer some grace and flexibility to your partner. Acknowledge that in order to move forward past this stage, both of you will need to creatively collaborate on ways you can make some changes to ensure that the both of you have your ongoing needs, emotional and otherwise, met in your lives and in your relationship. The question of whether or not you should break up is common during this stage. I recommend agreeing with your partner not to express threats to the existence of the relationship, though. These threats are incredibly harmful, especially to those with insecure attachment, and they can ultimately sabotage an otherwise workable relationship. If you're going through hell, keep going. If you want to make it work and your partner keeps showing up despite frustrating delays and confusion, you can likely make it through. Of course, at any stage of a relationship, your partner might exhibit abusive behavior, and this stage is particularly revealing when it comes to abusive behavior. Please safely exit abusive relationships. Kicking the can farther down the road in an abusive relationship is only going to make things worse. So please get help from a professional or domestic violence resource. Physical and sexual abuse are easier to identify than verbal and emotional abuse. And if you're not sure if your partner is being abusive, getting help is a good idea. And humans, especially those with insecure attachment, are not impervious to some limited abusive behavior. If a few borderline instances of verbal or emotional abuse have occurred in your relationship, practice strong boundaries around this. If your partner needs recovery or professional help, insist that they pursue this and hold that expectation that you will not tolerate verbal, emotional abuse. Be generous with one another. It's easy to get stingy when we feel self-protective and when two people feel like their needs aren't being met and they have to look out for their own interests because their partner clearly isn't. Emotional stinginess can become a vacuous trap. You have to articulate what's happening for you and be understanding of your partner's similar experience. If you feel like you've always had to be the bigger person, say so. Be firm but loving, not harsh and critical. Your partner probably feels the same way, and you two just haven't learned to see eye to eye with each other as of yet. If you've made it through the power struggle stage to the stability stage, congratulations. This is not an easy accomplishment. Enjoy your newfound harmony, but don't remain complacent for too long or you risk relational stagnation. If you don't want to be in a so-called sexless marriage, you have to continue to talk to each other, maintain honesty and vulnerability. If you notice yourself developing limerence for another person outside of your relationship, recognize that as a sign that you and your partner need to re-engage. Don't lean into the trap of pursuing satisfaction outside of your relationship. Instead, you need to pressure your relationship for more satisfaction. And I do just want to offer a caveat here. I know some couples and some polycules, there are exceptions to this. But what I'm talking about is cheating. I just want to honor the validity of different consensually non-monogamous relationship structure. Not an expert in that realm, but what I'm talking about is cheating and leaning into crushes when you are monogamously committed to your partner. So don't lose the plot. Know that commitment is the bridge to reaching the relational bliss stage. Once you've established stability, keep striving for greater intimacy, attunement, and security. Honor your precious relational creation by looking toward the future together, whether that's children, a house, a collaborative endeavor, shared business, travel, or mutually supportive individual career advancement, you name it. Just know what the two of you are capable of with your relationship as the cornerstone of your shared life. Making an overt declarative commitment to each other, whether or not traditional marriage is your cup of tea, and honoring that commitment each and every day is what gives way to relational bliss. This fifth and indefinite relationship stage requires little advice because it's an experiential knowing of how to be in a healthy and interdependent relationship. It's really a matter of keeping it going, using the skills you learned in the previous 4 stages to keep your love in a state of thriving and evolving through life together. Couples in this stage have learned to, 1, keep romantic love alive, 2, constructively work through conflict, 3, enjoy peace and stability together, and 4, continually renew their sense of commitment to the relationship. So if this is your goal, I encourage you to look for examples of blissful, lifelong love. Some of my favorites are Stan and Tracy Tatkin, the Gottmans, George Takei and Brad Altman, Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson, Lily Tomlin and Jane Wagner, and my own great-grandparents, Luther and Evelyn. Affirm that if this is what you want, then you can experience blissful love. But know that it's not something you and your partner can autopilot your way into. As you know, I'm a huge proponent of PACT, and I recommend reading some of Stan Tatkin's books if you'd like a more detailed understanding of what secure functioning entails. No matter what relationship stage you're in, if any, as of yet, know that there's help for getting through any personal or interpersonal relationship challenges. Get professional help locally or online if you're struggling. I'm a therapist, but I'm probably not your therapist, although I know some of my clients listen. Don't rely on podcasts or webcasts as your primary mental health support. Take good care of yourself, others, and your partner if you're coupled. You don't need to abandon yourself to do so. Also, if you can rate, follow, share this podcast with folks who might enjoy it and benefit from some navigation assistance around the quests, transformations, and triumphs in relationships and their life's journey, I greatly appreciate your support. Thank you for watching or listening. Until next time.